Hey, so this is my vlog for week 5 regarding social research, and I'll be answering questions 1 and 2. So, question 1, according to Schwab's essay, what are 4 types of questions? Please name and give an example. So, the 4 questions to ask are empirical, interpretation, moral, and aesthetic. So, empirical, an example of an empirical question would be something like, how many apples are in the basket? So, this is an example of empirical because it's a question that that can give an answer that can be measured or quantified in some way. Interpretation. So, interpretation, an example of this would be um, what would like a picture symbolize? So this is interpretive because the question tries to get an answer to understand something that could be subjective. An example of a moral question would be something like, "What would you do if you found a wallet on the ground?" So this is a moral question because the answer you would get requires judgment based off of an individual's person's morals about what is right to do. Lastly, aesthetic. So an example of an aesthetic question would be something like, "Do waffles taste good?" So this is an aesthetic question because it's a subjective opinion based off of the senses that vary from person to person. So an empirical question can lead, for the second part of the question, um, he suggests that empirical questions can produce interpretive trouble. What does this mean? And can you give an example of how this can happen in research? So an empirical question can lead to interpretive trouble. So the example given in the reading was about poverty among black and white people. The interpretive trouble uh, comes in. So how do we interpret this? So the student said, like, it's bad on black people, but then the professor said that it's more of a racial inequality, so it's a difference in interpretation. So it's different ways we interpret things, and it involves misinterpretation. So an example in research is that a researcher can gather results from an experiment, and he can interpret it one way, but then a person reading it can interpret it a different way, and then there's kind of a difference in opinion. So in addition to this, you also need to be able to support your interpretation of data with like arguments and social discussions. So for question 2, according to the essay, what are nihilism and fanaticism? So, according to the reading, nihilism is the belief that there is no truth, whereas fanaticism is the belief that there is only one truth, and this truth is subjective to different people depending on their beliefs. So, why do nihilism and fanaticism, or why are nihilism and fanaticism dead ends to sociological questions? What are they? So, what does sociologically mindful mean? So, being sociologically mindful means to have an open mind for discussion and to know our own limitations and biases. So, in order to have a sociological mindful discussion, um, you need to know your own limitations and biases to be able to learn more about different subjects. So if you are nihilistic and have fanaticism, you the conversation stops because, for example, if you're a nihilist, there are no truths, and then nothing can be learned, and no progress can be made into progress to be able to learn things. And if you if you are a practice fanaticism, there's only one truth according to the individual, and then nothing is going to be able to be evolved from your conversation. So, how does sociological mindfulness help us get closer to the truth? So, sociological mindfulness can bring us to the truth because in sociological discussions, we try to learn as much as we can from all different people and backgrounds, and having different discussions with people from different backgrounds will get us closer and closer to the truth because everyone has different perspectives, I guess. So, two questions I'm going to pose. Number one, how can we avoid misinterpretations and misleading data in our analysis or research to find the truth? And number two, what are some ways we can avoid dead ends in sociological questions? And is it possible to be completely unbiased?